My name is Sarah, and I thought I knew everything about my husband of 15 years. That was before last Tuesday when my entire world crumbled in a grocery store parking lot. I was running late picking up ingredients for dinner when I spotted David's silver Honda across the lot. Strange, he'd said he was working late at the office. Curiosity got the better of me as I watched him step out of his car. What I saw next made my blood run cold. David approached a tall man in a dark jacket, someone I'd never seen before. They exchanged brief words, then David handed him a thick white envelope. Even from my distance I could see the bulk of cash inside when the stranger quickly flipped through it. The transaction lasted maybe 30 seconds, but those 30 seconds changed everything. My hands trembled as I gripped my steering wheel, watching the stranger disappear into a black SUV while David nervously looked around before driving away. Questions flooded my mind like a dam bursting. Was my husband involved in something illegal? Drugs? Gambling debts? The David I married was a mild-mannered accountant who got nervous ordering pizza over the phone. That night I pretended everything was normal. David came home at his usual time, kissed my cheek and asked about my day like he always did. But I studied his face differently now, searching for signs of deception I'd somehow missed. His smile seemed forced, his laugh hollow. When he excused himself to take a work call in his study, I pressed my ear to the door but heard only muffled whispers. Sleep eluded me that night. I stared at the ceiling, listening to David's steady breathing beside me, wondering who this man really was. The envelope haunted my thoughts. How much money was in it? How long had these meetings been happening? Most terrifyingly, what would happen if I confronted him about what I'd seen? If you enjoyed the story, leave your comment, give it a like and subscribe. Thank you very much. The next morning I became a detective in my own home. After David left for work, I searched through his belongings with shaking hands. His wallet contained the usual items: credit cards, driver's license, a photo of us from our anniversary. Nothing suspicious. His laptop was password protected, something that had never bothered me before but now felt like a locked vault hiding terrible secrets. I checked our joint bank account online, scrolling through months of transactions. Nothing seemed unusual at first glance. The same recurring bills, grocery purchases, gas stations. But then I noticed something odd. Every few weeks, there were ATM withdrawals of exactly $500, always from the same machine downtown. David never mentioned needing that much cash regularly. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Emma. "Coffee later? You sounded stressed yesterday." I hadn't realized my anxiety was so obvious, but Emma had always been perceptive. Maybe talking to someone would help, though I couldn't bring myself to share what I'd witnessed. Not yet. That afternoon I drove to the downtown ATM where the withdrawals occurred. It was located outside a small office building I'd never noticed before. The directory listed various businesses: a tax preparation service, a real estate office, and something called Meridian Consulting Services on the third floor. The name meant nothing to me, but I memorized it anyway. Back home I googled Meridian Consulting Services, but found no website, no reviews, nothing. It was as if the company existed only on that building directory. My imagination ran wild with possibilities, each scenario worse than the last. Was David laundering money? Paying off blackmailers? The man I'd shared a bed with for 15 years suddenly felt like a complete stranger. That evening, David seemed more distant than usual. He barely touched his dinner and kept checking his phone. When I asked if everything was okay, he gave me that same forced smile and claimed work was just stressful. But I noticed how his hands shook slightly as he reached for his water glass, and how he avoided making eye contact. I couldn't take the uncertainty anymore. The next day I called in sick to work and decided to follow David. My heart pounded as I parked across from his office building, feeling like a character in some terrible thriller movie. At 11:30 a.m., David emerged and walked to his car. This wasn't his usual lunch break. Something was happening. I followed him through downtown traffic, staying several cars behind. My palms were sweaty on the steering wheel as we drove toward the industrial district. David pulled into the parking lot of a small diner called Murphy's Place. I parked across the street and watched through binoculars I'd borrowed from our neighbor's garage. The same tall man from the grocery store was already there, sitting in a corner booth. David joined him and I could see them talking intensely. The stranger slid a manila folder across the table, which David studied carefully before nodding. Then David reached into his jacket and produced another envelope, smaller than the first one, but clearly containing money. My phone rang, making me jump. It was my mother asking about Thanksgiving plans. I tried to sound normal while watching my husband conduct what looked like another illegal transaction. After hanging up, I saw David and the stranger shake hands. The meeting was over, lasting only 15 minutes. I followed David back to his office, my mind racing with theories. The manila folder suggested documents were being exchanged along with money. Was David selling company secrets? Buying false documents? The possibilities were endless and terrifying. I thought about our mortgage, our retirement savings, our entire life built together. Could it all disappear if David was arrested? That evening, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to confront him. I couldn't live with this uncertainty anymore. Couldn't pretend everything was normal while my husband engaged in mysterious cash transactions with strangers. Whatever the truth was, I needed to know. Even if it destroyed our marriage, even if it destroyed me. As David settled into his recliner to watch the news, I took a deep breath and prepared to ask the question that had been burning inside me for days. David, we need to talk. My voice came out steadier than I felt as I turned off the television. He looked up, surprised by my serious tone. I sat across from him, my hands clasped tightly in my lap to stop them from shaking. I saw you yesterday. At the grocery store parking lot. With that man. And the envelope full of money. The words tumbled out before I could lose my nerve. David's face went completely white, then flushed red. For a moment he looked like he might deny everything. Sarah, I can explain, he started, but I held up my hand. I followed you today to Murphy's place. I saw the folder, so you give him more money. David, what's going on? Are you in some kind of trouble? Are we in danger? My voice cracked on the last word. David buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. When he looked up, tears were streaming down his cheeks. Oh God, Sarah. I never wanted you to find out like this. I've been trying to protect you, to protect our family. Protect us from what? I whispered, terrified of the answer. He stood up and began pacing, running his hands through his hair. Do you remember my brother Michael? The one who died in that car accident 5 years ago. I nodded, confused by the sudden topic change. Michael had been David's younger brother, a troubled man with addiction issues. He didn't die in an accident, Sarah. He was murdered. The words hit me like a physical blow. He owed money to some very dangerous people. Drug dealers. When he couldn't pay, they killed him and made it look like an accident. I stared at him in shock. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you go to the police? Because they came to me next, David continued, his voice barely above a whisper. They said Michael's debt was now my responsibility. $25,000. They gave me a year to pay it off, or they'd come after you, after us. The room seemed to spin around me. The man in the parking lot. Is their collector. I've been making payments every month for the past year. The $500 withdrawals, the meetings, it's all been to keep us safe. David collapsed back into his chair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. We have to go to the police, I said immediately, but David shook his head violently. These aren't people you go to the police about, Sarah. They have connections, they know things. If I involve the cops, we'll both end up like Michael. I spent the next 3 days in a daze, processing David's revelation about his brother and the debt. But something didn't feel right. The story had holes. Why would drug dealers wait a year to collect from Michael's family? Why such organized, professional meetings instead of threats and violence? I decided to do something David would never forgive me for. I hired a private investigator. Marcus Chin came highly recommended and specialized in background checks. I gave him everything I knew. The man's description, the location of their meetings, the name, Meridian Consulting Services. Within 48 hours he called with information that shattered my world completely. Mrs. Patterson, I need you to sit down for this, Marcus said over the phone. The man your husband has been meeting with isn't a debt collector. His name is James Morrison, and he's a private investigator specializing in insurance fraud. My blood turned to ice. Insurance fraud? Your husband has been paying Morrison to help him fake his own death. The documents in that folder? They're false medical records, a fake death certificate, and instructions for a new identity. Your husband has been planning to disappear, Sarah. And he's been using your joint savings to fund it. The phone slipped from my numb fingers. Everything clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The The secretive behavior, the cash withdrawals, the lies about Michael's death. It was all an elaborate deception. But why? Why would David want to fake his own death and abandon our life together? That evening I confronted David with the truth. His face crumbled when I mentioned Morrison's real name and profession. "How long have you known?" he whispered. "Why, David? Why would you do this to us?" I was crying now, 15 years of marriage dissolving before my eyes. He looked at me with such sadness that for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. "Because I'm dying, Sarah. I have pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The doctors gave me 6 months, maybe less." I stared at him in shock. "That's impossible. You seem fine, you haven't been sick." "I've been hiding it. Taking pain medications, scheduling treatments during work hours. I didn't want you to watch me waste away." He pulled out a folder from his desk drawer, real medical records this time. "I was going to fake my death so you could collect the life insurance money. $2 million, Sarah. Enough to secure your future." But there was one final twist that even David didn't see coming. As I held those medical records, I noticed something that made my heart stop. The patient name wasn't David Patterson. It was Michael Patterson. David's supposedly dead brother. "David," I whispered, "whose medical records are these really?" His face went completely white as he realized his mistake. The truth was more shocking than anything I could have imagined. David wasn't dying. Michael wasn't dead. And the elaborate scheme I'd uncovered was something far more sinister than insurance fraud. It was the perfect murder, and I was supposed to be the victim.